Yeah, I'm Jason. I had kind of a weird upbringing because I was raised by hippies. My parents, they were hippies. Full-on encounter group macrame fucking hippies. My parents were so much hippies that they grew and sold their own weed and they were okay with taking stolen merchandise for it. I grew up in a house that had one TV and 9 cable boxes. And the first time I ever saw a picture of Jesus, I thought he was the Zigzag Man. And this is pretty much the result you get right here. Drink it in. I'm what happens when you're raised by not one but 2 people who thought it was a good idea to trade weed for a waterbed. The result of that is I look like a wizard you would summon if you needed help hot wiring a car. I'm a 45-year-old man that owns throwing stars. And I once went to a white trash themed party where my costume was just clothes I already owned. What I'm telling you out there is I'm a dude that dudes with face tattoos think is their friend. Because I'm not 100% sure what it is about this face, but people seem to think it's safe to be shitty around it. I've had complete strangers come up to me and tell me about entire episodes of Sons of Anarchy. And worse than that, I always get the dude looking for someone to be racist with. You've grown, but I put a positive spin on that. And that positive spin is that I now have a new life skill. And that life skill is I know when I need to be somewhere else very fast. Because I can tell from 3 blocks away when a neighborhood crazy with a cat on his shoulder looks like he needs to enthusiastically share a racial slur with me because he thinks I might cook meth. And I can't even stand near the door of a bar without people just handing me their ID. Some of the words I've said to women more than any other are, I'm sorry, I'm not following you, I live this way too. That's my public existence, a constant, a hyper-awareness of how I present myself when I'm around women. Because I get it, man, I seem like someone who would own a sword. And it's weird because the thing that fucks up my dating life a lot is my reading. I'm a big reader and I love reading like true crime, murder books, cults, that sort of shit, right? And a consequence of that is I know a lot of creepy shit. And sometimes I share that knowledge without ever being prompted. Now we gotta agree that an authoritatively creepy statement shouldn't just be coming out of this face. Because I look like I spend my off hours driving around country roads in a tow truck. Looking to find people on the side of the road that I can take back to my fucking house where I have a window painted black. But I was on a date with a woman about 2 months ago, and she jokingly said, "Oh, I'm so tired, I wish someone would chloroform me." And without thinking, I said, "That doesn't work how it does in the movies." That was the silentest plate of chicken wings you ever saw 2 people eat. She couldn't take her eyes off me, and it wasn't for the reasons you want. It was like a silent agreement passed between us while we were eating. So when we're done, you will go this way and I will go this way. And we will never speak of this again. And our date was at one of those fucked up phony bars that pretends to be a speakeasy. Round of applause if you've been to one of those places. Round of applause if you say fuck those places. I'm done with this cargo cult speakeasies, man. If you have a license, you're not a speakeasy. Let's define what a speakeasy was. A speakeasy definitely was not a kitschy environment where tech workers would go to crawl behind a repurposed bookshelf in order to pay too much money for an old-fashioned made out of oranges that grew on the fucking roof. A speakeasy was a hellhole of a basement where poor people went to drink antifreeze out of a bathtub until they were paralyzed. Because if you leave a bar and you don't have a limp, you were not at a speakeasy. But that started me thinking, in Washington, we've legalized marijuana. You guys have legalized it here. Other states have, and by the time the day is done, it'll be legal all across the country. So I think what they should start doing is they should start opening up pot shops that recreate the experience of buying weed in a sketchy situation. Like a haunted house, right? Because young people need to know. It's like if you started smoking weed after the Twin Towers fell, you've never had a seed blow up in your eye. And you've certainly never had headache weed. I picture an all-immersive experience that begins with you taking a bus to a neighborhood where cars are on fire. And you press a buzzer and a chick with dreadlocks and bare feet answers the door. And she says, "Hi, I'm Sapphire. What brings you here today?" And you say, "Well, I'm here to buy an eighth of weed." And she says, "Follow me right this way and have a seat on this disgusting couch." You'll sit next to Seth. You and Seth will be watching YouTube videos about 9/11 for an hour and 45 minutes. And I'm going to completely forget that you were even here. And right when you're about to leave, I'll come back and I'll say, "Hi, I'm Sapphire. What brings you here today?" You'll say, "Remember me? I'm here to buy the weed." And I'll say, "Oh, right, the weed." And I'll leave again. And 10 minutes later, a piece of shit in a leather vest is going to show up. And he's going to accuse you of being here to try to fuck me. And then you're going to have to jump out a window. Because I think that's what buying weed should be like. Like I said, young people need to know. Young people need to know what kind of horror we used to have to put ourselves through if we wanted to be comfortably high on a Friday night. Back when my only option was to ride around town on a city bus and hope I saw someone that looked guilty. Do you want to know how I had to buy weed? I had to get into a car with a stranger. My parents didn't have a lot of rules for me, but not getting into cars with strangers was one of them. And I got into cars with strangers a lot. I had to take a ride in a shit brown Ford LTD with a dude who looked like Charles Manson, who I met 10 minutes ago in the parking lot of a roller skating rink, just on the off chance that there was weed at the end of this story. And I always had to take the ride, too, because I was the big guy in my high school crew. I was the big guy. They said, "You get in the car with him, Jason." And I'd say, "Why me?" And they said, "Well, in case you have to fight him." I was like, "Fight him? Are you out of your fucking mind? I'm 14 years old. I can't go hands with this Vietnam-looking motherfucker. Because this is a dude who definitely took a shit in his own helmet while maintaining eye contact with Charlie. That's not a fight I'm going to come out on the right side of. You know how happy I was when my high school crew got a second big guy? That way, we could trade off that chore every other week. I could tell him, "I'm sorry, Tony, this weekend is your weekend to maybe get murdered." I gotta say, I think legalization has made buying weed dorky. I went to a pot shop with a friend of mine the other day. Everybody there looked like they dressed like they had just been evicted from the YMCA. There wasn't a decent pair of motorcycle boots in the bunch. When I used to go buy weed, dudes who sold you weed looked like they were in Guns N' Roses. Now they look like they're in the Royal Tenenbaums. One guy was wearing an orange jumpsuit. There wasn't even a fucking gun. I'm probably the only guy left out there that gets nervous when he goes to buy drugs and doesn't see a gun. Look, all I'm saying is you shouldn't go into a place to buy drugs and know with 100% certainty that you can beat the shit out of your drug dealer. That's not a good look. And everybody there was buying like a Rubik's Cube with like flashing lights and a nozzle on it to smoke their weed out of. Is there anybody left who knows how to smoke weed with a knife? You? Yeah. But I'm not saying it because it's badass. It's a little badass. But if you think of all the ways to smoke weed, knife hitting is the most difficult. It involves a second dude. But knife hits have flair. And if you're going to be a burnout, you should do it with a little bit of pizzazz. And my friend said, "Well, we don't do knife hits anymore. We do dabs. Dabs use a blowtorch." And I said, "Yeah, well, so does a fucking creme brulee." Besides, people think it's going to be all like rainbows and parties and whatnot. And I don't think so. I think there will be a life skill that disappears. I think the fight or flight response will disappear. We'll be a nation of amorphous blobs floating around in those fatso chairs from WALL-E doing dabs. And we'll say, "Well, however did it come to this?" And we go, "Oh, right, this is because we no longer have to know how to jump over a fence to get away from a motherfucker with a teardrop tattoo and a butterfly knife." You remember butterfly knives, right? The OG fidget spinner? Besides, party stories are going to get weird. I'm going to be at a party one of these days, and I'm going to turn to a kid next to me, and I'm going to say, "Man, one time I had to help push a Camaro out of a ditch so we could go buy weed from an Indian dude named Jer Bear. How about you?" And that kid's going to go, "Well, I went to a clean and well-lit place of business, and I bought Alaska Thunderfuck with my mom's visa." All I'm saying is I don't think drug deals should end with a receipt. They should end with you having to run away. All right, guys, thank you so much. That is my time.